And despite Saudi Arabia's recent rapprochement with Iran, Washington is reportedly currently reviewing Riyadh's conditions for potential normalization with Israel. According to daily paper Israel Hayom, speaking to an unnamed U.S. official, the most sensitive issue among Riyadh's conditions from Israel's point of view is consent to the development of Saudi nuclear capabilities for civilian purposes, while the Palestinian issue, despite official statements by the kingdom, is not in the list of claims. The move was reportedly pushed forward by Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who visited Riyadh and Jerusalem 2 weeks ago. According to the report, Graham urged the White House to respond quickly to Riyadh, saying this opportunity is not unlimited. If we don't do it in 2023 or early 2024, the window could close. This latest report seems to confirm an earlier report in December 2022 by I-24 News that Saudi officials held a series of talks with U.S. Jewish community leaders, telling them the progress on Israeli-Saudi normalization is ongoing, but that more time was needed. In that same report, I-24 News had also reported that Saudi's list of demands had been presented to Washington in exchange for progress. The Palestinian issue was also not mentioned in the conversation. And joining me now is Ariel Kahana, Israel Hayom diplomatic correspondent. Ariel, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. Hello, Sarah.
Ariel, according to your source, was there any indication as to the willingness of the Biden administration to cede to these conditions for normalization with Israel?
So, of course, that's, let's say, $1 billion question. Look, I was told by American officials from the administration that the list, as it was presented by the Saudis, is checked by the administration. Whether they're checking it in a positive direction or not, I don't know. Of course, it will need, from President Biden, a lot of courage to change the course towards the Saudis, because we know that there was tension between the current administration and the Saudis from the beginning of Biden's term 2 years ago, and that's mostly because of the Khashoggi case, the journalist who was assassinated by the Saudi regime. Then we saw the Biden visit to Saudi, which actually failed. So now we are talking practically about a third try. Now, whether it will succeed or not, I don't know. I think there is now, I would say, an international interest for the U.S. to change the policy, and that's because the new player in the game is China. Since China is #1 priority for the administration, and now that China is becoming an actor here in the Middle East, and we know they gave the umbrella to the normalization deal between Saudi and Iran, maybe that would change the picture from Biden's perspective, and he will reply positively to the Saudi dimensions.
And despite public statements stating otherwise, the Palestinian issue is not a condition for Riyadh to normalize ties with Israel. What does that reveal about the Saudis?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question. About which one of the list?
The Palestinian issue was not a condition in the report for Riyadh to normalize ties with Israel. What does that reveal about the Saudis?
Yeah. Okay. So So look, actually, Sarah, it's not so new. I can tell you that MBS, the ruler of the Arab Saudi, actually he said in a closed meeting with Jewish leaders, by the way, which you mentioned before, he said, I told Abu Mazen, I told President Abbas, the Palestinian president, I told him the train has left the station. And that means I'm going to do peace with Israel, whether you will be with me or will not. That happened actually a few years ago. And that's the reason there is, let's say, a discussion from Saudi aspect to talk with Israel. Now, still he has his demands, and they were not answered yet. But although we hear very, clear rhetoric from Riyadh about Palestinian state, etc., what is said in closed room is completely different. From the Saudi point of view, from Saudi point of view, Palestinians, probably any kind of peace deal with Israel will include kind of declaration regarding the Palestinian issue. But it is not, I would say, a real demand by Riyadh if it comes to normalization ties, normalization with Israel.
Right, it's not a prerequisite. And as you mentioned earlier, Saudi Arabia appears lately to be leaning towards closer ties with China. We saw it with the Chinese brokered agreement to renew ties with Iran, and generally as efforts to become more powerful regional influence. But it doesn't rule out Saudi Arabia's ties with the U.S., correct?
So I think, and that's by the way, that's the reason there is some kind of optimism or hope for optimism here in Israel. After Saudi made a significant step and even few steps towards the Chinese, people believe that now to balance ties, they will now try to come close again to America. Now, you mentioned Senator Lindsey Graham, who was in Riyadh a few weeks ago, and he congratulated the Saudis for buying, I don't remember the exact number, but a lot of Boeing aircraft from the United States. So it tells you that the Chinese is not choosing China to be its ally. It tells you the Saudi wants to play or to dance, if you want, with both sides, with Beijing, but at the same time with Washington. So now that's why the question now is whether the administration, American administration, will reply positively this time and will give MBS, as the ruler of Saudi, what he really asking for.
Right, and Ariel, it seems that perhaps, you tell me, is the nail in the coffin that we assume to be Netanyahu's diplomatic dream to have Saudi Arabia join the Abraham Accords. It's not completely dead, is it?
Yeah, I think you are touching a very important point. You know, Netanyahu, when he established his new government, sixth government, mentions peace with Saudi as a first goal, not just judicial reform, not the economy. I think he wants his legacy to be complete of the peace deal with Arab countries. You mentioned Abraham Accords, so that's the UAE and Bahrain and Morocco and Sudan with all the problems Sudan has. But if he will bring peace with Saudi, it's actually the end of the Israeli-Arab conflict, which we are suffering for 8 decades, if not more. So that's definitely his dream, his goal. And I'll tell you even more so, when Netanyahu speaks about the option of normalization ties with Israel, you can see his energy, his passion.
Absolutely. Ariel Kahana, thank you very much. We do have to go out for a